Hey, what's up, guys? This is Jordan from Scale History SLC, and today I'm going to do a brief overview of my Japanese armored and infantry platoons. My thinking is that I'll go through and talk about the unit itself, and then I will give my thoughts on the model and yeah, just kind of run you through my thought process on building this army and how I want to field it and how I think it'll do in bolt action. So let's jump in by talking about why I chose this army. It originally started because we were supposed to have a tournament here in Salt Lake that was all armored platoons, with another stipulation that the units that you had in your army had to be in service before 1943. So anything after 1943 you could not field. That doesn't have a huge impact on Japanese armor, or at least the tanks that I decided to take. But that's kind of where this started. And I've always thought Japanese armor is really cool. I know it's definitely not the best armor out there. They were pretty far behind in their development and just really didn't have the resources, steel and all that kind of stuff to put into it. So they did have very interesting designs, and even the camo patterns I've always just thought were really cool. So I thought I would do a Japanese armored platoon. Also, I haven't seen many armored platoons built out of Japanese tanks. So yeah, I always like to try and do unique forces if I can. So it started there. I got a couple 3D prints from a buddy, and I just kind of grew and grew. And I think part of it is because with the COVID lockdowns, I just kind of had a lot of time to put into building this army. And so I originally had only one infantry unit, and it just kind of grew. And I love like all of these models, so yeah, eventually just turned into both an armored and an infantry platoon. A little bit like about my thinking for force building. I'm not a balls to the wall, win at all cost player. Like I said, I like to field unique forces, and I'm not even a very good general. I feel like I lose a lot. But I just like to put together forces of things that I think are cool. So, yeah, let's talk about the armored platoon first. So, I can build a list of 1,250 points for my armored platoon. That's going to be all the vehicles you see here, plus one squad of infantry. Definitely maxed out infantry, and I can go over that list in a little bit. But yeah, one of the things about Japanese tanks is they're pretty crappy in general, and their points reflect that. So really, you could have 15 Japanese tanks in a tank list easily. And one, I didn't want to paint that many of the same tanks. It's just too much for me. But two, I'm also not real big into just like horde armies in general. And we'll kind of go over that when I go over my infantry platoon, because you'll notice I'm missing a lot of the kind of cliche or staple units that most Japanese forces have. But anyways, let's focus on this armor. So yeah, I've got these models here. Most everything is veteran, just again to like fill up points. It's actually really hard to build a 1250 Japanese tank platoon without having 100 models. So let's start looking at these individually. Alright, so first up, this is probably the best tank in my force. So this is the Shinhota Chiha Warlord Games kit. I wanted to have at least one tank that was somewhat not competitive, but could pack a punch. So what this Shinhoto Chiha is it's an armor 8 with a machine gun in the hull and a machine gun in the back of the turret, and then a medium anti-tank gun. Which, I mean, medium anti-tank guns are definitely viable options in bolt action, but for a Japanese tank that's not like an experimental type, that's a really big deal, and you'll see that as we look at some of my other options. So yeah, this tank was used, or began being used in real life in 1942, so it clears that 1943 mark by a year, but still offers me something of a heavy hitter, at least by Japanese armor terms. So it's still an armor 8, still a light tank, but it does have 2 machine guns. Doesn't have a one-man turret rule, so I actually think it's pretty viable. And a lot of people say Japanese armor just sucks and shouldn't be taken, but kind of the way bolt action works doesn't really reflect reality, in that a lot of the Japanese armor units are actually pretty points effective. They just might not be as durable or even as intimidating as your American or German or Soviet counterparts. So this is Warlord Games plastic kit. It's a really fun kit to put together. It's a breeze. Most everything fits together really well. I think the turret was a little bit fiddly, but that's to be expected. With this one, I took the crew member that was included and chopped off his head and put a Warlord metal head with the Rising Sun band, just to make it look more unique and a little intense. But yeah, this kit was a ton of fun to put together. Painted it a little fast. Now that I have a little 5-month-old daughter, when I get hobby time, I got to make the most of it. So there's a couple things I don't like about it, but in general, it's tabletop standard. And if you've been following my Instagram channel, you know I'm big on tabletop standard. Definitely not here to win any best in show or spend 4 weeks weathering a tank. But yep, so that's your Shinhoto Chiha. Next, we'll take a look at the regular Chiha. Again, it's an 8 armor, the 2 machine guns. This one has a light howitzer, so this is going to be much more suited to dealing with infantry. This was a 3D printed model my buddy Doug made for me. It was actually a really, really clean print. Very happy with this. You'll see some of my 3D printed Hagos are not very great, and that's definitely the file's fault and not my buddy's printing, because this one is excellent. I mean, you really have to look close to know that it's a 3D print, except for maybe the machine guns are a little blocky. But one of the upgrades to this I did was the turret antenna there. It looks like a turret ring. That actually came from Warlord's plastic kit, because it did not use the standard Chiha turret. So I just had that lying around, and I figured I would slap it on here to make it look way better. But yeah, so this has got the light howitzer, is going to deal with infantry, armor 8, which is about as good as you'll get unless you want to use experimental Japanese tanks, and I'm not too into that. So yeah, this will be another point sufficient tank that'll be good at dealing with infantry. Pretty excited about this little guy. Hope I don't drop him while on camera, that would suck. This is I believe, off the top of my head, Type 94 TK tankette. I could be wrong on the types, but Japanese naming conventions are so confusing. Even though I've spent the last couple months painting and researching all these, I still can't get them straight, so forgive me. But this is a TK tankette. Got this model from my local store. It's made by Trenchworks. And this little guy comes in at 70 points. It's a armor 7. Goes in the armored car slot. Has a medium machine gun on it and has recce. So for 70 points, I'm getting a mobile, fully enclosed armored machine gun with recce. And like I said before, bolt action doesn't always do the best job of like portraying how useful things actually were. So in real life, I mean, maybe like as a police unit, this little tankette would be great, but in combat, it surely was not great. Yeah, it's just a super fun little car, armored car that I wanted to have. Again, I get it in the armored car slot, so I can bring it with my infantry platoon also. With another tank, I like to bring armored and vehicles in my infantry platoons. Just makes the game varied and exciting and fun. But I'm actually looking forward to using... excuse me. I'm actually looking forward to using this guy in games. I think he's actually going to do quite well. If not killing infantry, then at least harassing them and being a tough target because he's armored and fully enclosed. But like I said, this is a Trenchworks resin and metal model. It's a beautiful model to put together. Had no issues with any warping or anything like that. The detail is nice and crisp. And they even included magnets for the turret, so you can make sure that it doesn't fall off. But I actually didn't even use the magnets on here. The turret kind of sits pretty tight in its space, so not really worried about it falling off. And then the tank commander, I just in general like to have tank commanders in my tanks. I just think it adds a lot of character. He's custom. I think I used a US tanker body that I had laying around and another metal Japanese warlord head. Did a little painting magic. If you look real close, you can see it's not the best job, but again, tabletop standard works just fine. So I think this will actually be the command vehicle for my armor platoon, because why not? Alright, next up we have the Hago. And I've got 4 of these. 3 of them are 3D printed. And like I said earlier, something about the print file was not great, and they didn't print super well. Again, not my buddy's fault. I blame the prints, because the other models that he's made for me are fantastic. And so if I call this tabletop standard, the other Hagos I painted are below this standard for sure. But I figured, you know, the models weren't that great. I didn't want to spend a ton of time painting them. So I just did them real quick, real basic. I don't even know if I applied any washes or anything. Barely any weathering. Just good enough to, like, look okay on the table. But this specific Hago, I obviously spent a lot more time on. So this is the metal and resin Hago from Warlord Games. Another fun model to put together. Don't recall really having any issues with this model in particular, except maybe some of the fiddly bits. So I do remember now, actually, the main gun and the machine guns didn't mount very well. There weren't really any good anchor spots, and so they're on there pretty loosely. I had to do some drilling and did my best to anchor them well, but they're fiddly, and I actually decided to leave the turret machine gun off. You can see by the flag there would be another machine gun, because I just figured, especially in that position, if I'm just even turning the turret, it would definitely get bumped and probably break off. So just didn't even bother with it. Game wise, I don't know if I'll even remember there was a machine gun there, but I think I had originally planned on this being my command tank, so I thought, oh, maybe there'd be a radio in there or something, but oh well. Again, more in it for the fun. But yeah, so these little guys are 90 points. They're armor 7, which is pretty weak. But probably even worse is they have the one-man turret rule, which means that they have to roll a order test every time they try to advance, even if they have no pins, because you just have the one guy in the turret, the tank commander, who's commanding, but is also loading and firing. So that's a pretty debilitating rule. And the gun is not a light anti-tank gun; it's a low velocity light anti-tank gun, so it's only doing +3. I don't know of all the Japanese tanks you could get if these are the most efficient, but they were definitely heavily used in World War II. If you've seen the HBO series The Pacific, there's a Japanese tank attack on Peleliu, and you can see these Hagos, and that's kind of originally what I was thinking when putting this force together. I was thinking of that counterattack. But of course these tanks were used all over the place. So, yeah, the model was great. One of my favorite tank models that I've painted up. In-game, I don't know how they're gonna fare. I've got 4 of them, so maybe they'll just kind of be targets or be distractions, but yeah, I think they're super cool little tanks, so had to have them. And for an armor platoon, if you're going to have infantry, they got to have transports. So I grabbed this Warlord, again, Type 97 truck, maybe? I don't know. It's an Isuzu. That's all I really know. I can look it up later. I'll have the product pictures in the bottom left corner. But yeah, this is metal and resin. It's definitely one of the weightier models that I have. It's just a big block of resin and metal. Not a whole lot to say about it. It has an option for a machine gun, but I don't know, I guess I could put one in the window, but I wasn't too worried about it. Actually, I don't even think I have a spare Japanese machine gun lying around, so that's probably why I didn't put one in the window, but maybe in the future I'll grab one. But yeah, this is a good kit. The window frame is a little wonky, as you can see there. That's probably my only gripe with it. It comes with a driver, which is cool. And that'll just transport some dudes. So this is probably what I'm most excited about for my armored platoon, is my AA truck. So this is Warlord's 20mm AA gun with a magnet on the back of a 3D printed Type 94 truck. So again, my buddy Doug printed out this truck. Really nice print. It's perfect. He actually even stretched out the bed just a little bit, so we made sure the gun fit. I know that when this gun was mounted on a truck, when this gun was mounted on a truck, it had a smaller mount. But I didn't want to have a stationary 20mm AA gun and a whole nother model of it on a truck, so I just decided to bend history a little bit. But yeah, this one will put out 2 shots, light auto cannon, but it's mobile, and armor. Oh, well, it's a soft skin truck, so not very survivable, but I've got a good range with that, with the light auto cannon. So my plan is just to kind of park it somewhere with a good field of view, hopefully out of range of small arms fire, and just let him have at it with some infantry. So again, I can pull the gun off here. I can show you. But he also will safely stay on the truck thanks to that magnet. The magnet actually came from the Trenchworks kit. Came with 2 tiny magnets, and of course I dropped one in my garage, never to be seen again, so that's why I have a washer. But yeah, for a 3D printed model, I didn't really mind putting the washer on there, because I'm not going to use the truck without the gun. So, you know, if you know me, tabletop standard is where I'm at. So that's my armor platoon. And of course, to get it to 1250, I will add some infantry units to it. But yeah, that's my armor. So let's look at some infantry. Alright, so here's my infantry platoon. Like I said, I didn't really stick with the typical unit selection that you'd see for a Japanese platoon. I'm not big on horde armies. It just doesn't seem like a very interesting way to play. Part of it is I'm lazy and I don't want to paint a billion dudes. But yeah, the Japanese definitely had some successes, especially earlier in the war, because they were just a well-trained army. And so I think the stereotype of constant bonsai charges is a little overplayed. But some, I know like people are looking for that specific play style. It's just not for me. So I don't have any bamboo spear fighters. I do have 2 suicide bombers, but they don't have the stick mines. Those were really only used in like Iwo Jima and afterwards. The bamboo stick fighters are really representing just Japanese civilians that were trained on the home islands expecting an invasion. So, like I said, it just didn't really seem like something I wanted to replicate. So, also, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I'm kind of on this all-metal infantry phase. So everything you see here is metal. But yeah, so this is about 1,000 points. If I add in a tank and a truck, I never play above 1,000 points for infantry platoons, so I figured that would just be fine. So we could talk about these specific units. Alright, so first up we have my command unit. I thought the model of the captain on the horse was just pretty badass, so I had to have him. I do plan on taking him in my armored platoon, mostly because it looks cool, and the horse acts as a transport, so it doesn't need to be in a truck. But yeah, so that's a captain there on a horse. I know he is expensive points-wise, and a lot of people would say that higher officers aren't worth it, and they're probably right. But like I said, rule of cool for me, and that works just fine. So my lieutenant on the ground here will either work as my captain when he's dismounted, or as a standalone lieutenant, should I choose not to take the captain. But the lieutenant is a custom miniature that I converted. I had a duplicate pose. I had one sprue of Japanese infantry, the plastic ones from Warlord. So I gave him the sword arm, gave him a sheath for his sword, and yeah, I've got my very own custom lieutenant. So here are my 2 suicide bombers, improvised tank weapons. Not a whole lot to say. I didn't go with the stick bombs. They're a little cliche for my taste. But yeah, definitely couldn't pass up having these guys running around in the field. They'll also be in my armor platoon. My thought is that maybe I'll use my captain to snap to action them and get them to really put the hurt on a tank. I don't know how effective that's actually going to be. But yeah, when these guys hit with a +8, it's pretty intense. So yeah, my plan is just to kind of have them forward deploy and be hidden until, you know, something comes close. But yeah, these are Warlords, improvised tank hunters, and yeah, they're sweet little kits. I think they look pretty cool. Alright, so this was the first infantry squad that I painted. Like I said originally, I was just building an armor platoon. I was just going to have one infantry squad. It was supposed to be a quick project. Started out with these guys. These are Warlords, Japanese infantry in summer dress. They're really nice models. They're a little bit small compared to their other ones. and so I don't know if these were originally another company's molds that they just bought, but yeah, they don't look that bad on the table. Tabletop standard. I've always noticed when I'm playing that I don't notice details or things like that, because you're so focused on the game. I mean, everything just kind of looks like a blob, so I think they'll do just fine. But yeah, this is a 10-man squad, or sorry, 9-man squad, because this was the squad I got a duplicate pose from, and decided to make the duplicate into my lieutenant. So this is 9 men, all rifles except for the LMG here, and yeah, painted up in summer dress, so caulk and gold would be a perfect battle for them anywhere in China, but also, of course, the Pacific Islands. So that's squad number 1. Here we're looking at squad number 2. This is Warlord's veteran kit. Again, all metal. That's the only way I know how to do infantry anymore. I have wanted this kit since I pretty much started Bolt Action 2 years ago. I always thought it was so cool, but never had any designs on building a Japanese army until recently. So yeah, once I started expanding into a infantry platoon, I had to have these guys. So these are my jungle veterans. These guys are a 10-man squad. Rifles, 1 SMG for the or for the NCO there, and then LMG, which is custom. There's a prone rifleman in the kit, and I'm not a huge fan of prone models, especially just singular ones. So I took him and chopped his rifle off, gave him a LMG from the Japanese plastic sprue, and then put him on a custom base with the other prone model in the unit who's throwing a grenade, who will act as his loader. I think it turned out pretty cool. Pretty stoked on that. I think I did one or two other minor conversions in here. Just swapping a rifle or two. But yeah, these guys were super fun to paint. Tons of detail, tons of extra like equipment and webbing, and of course the foliage just makes them pop real nice. So definitely would recommend this kit from Warlord. Alright, so for my 3rd infantry squad, like I said, I go all metal, but Warlord only had the 2 metal sets, and that's not going to be enough for a infantry platoon, so I had to look elsewhere. I looked at a couple other manufacturers. I decided to try these ones from the Assault group. They're the only ones that looked not super stiff, and I didn't know anybody that had them, so I like to be unique again, so I decided to grab them. So this is actually 4 metal sets. They come in a blister of 4 guys each. So this will be my Grenadier squad. So I've got 3 knee mortars. You can see them in the back there. And I painted their bases slightly different color because I wanted to be able, I could put them in any of the infantry units. So I could have 3 Grenadier squads, each with 1 mortar. I could have them all in 1 squad, 2 in 1, just offers a little flexibility. But these Grenadier squads are pretty big. They can get up to 18 men. This one is 15. So this will definitely be like my powerhouse unit. They're so big that they can withstand a ton of fire. Pretty much all my infantry will be veteran, so super survivable. But they've also got those 3 light mortars that can actually really do some damage if they manage to hit. Probably going to use them for objective clearing. They can just sit off the objective and let those mortars go until they range in and take care of whatever infantry unit is sitting on the objective. So yeah, I just figured they're going to be my hammer, and if all else fails, I've got the bonsai rule. I could always use that. So yeah, so like I said, this is these are all from the Assault group. I have mixed thoughts about these models. Some of them are super cool. Really cool, unique poses. They scale great next to Warlord's Metal Infantry. So again, like on the table, they just blend in together. Some of them have foliage on their helmets, as you can see. Just a lot of variety, which was nice. But compared to Warlord's sculpting, the face detail isn't really there. Everything is really shallow. There's also a bunch of models with huge mustaches and beards, and I know the Japanese had mustaches and facial hair, but it almost is like Mario and Luigi-esque on some of these. It's just a little much. I also notice a lot of these models are like looking up to the sky, which is like just a really picky thing. But there's like 4 or 5 of them that are just looking up at the sky, and I don't know what that's supposed to be portraying, if they're looking for American aircraft or something, but it just seemed weird to me. And there's a couple of the poses are also kind of weird. I don't know, I would say they're awesome models to paint. They add a ton of variety, especially if you're looking for all metal Japanese miniatures, and they've got a whole bunch of other ranges. Definitely would recommend them. I just think they're maybe not as polished as like a Warlord or Empress, but definitely viable for the table. I am planning on getting more of their miniatures for some different factions. And yeah, I think they just add a nice variety to the force. And last but not least, I don't think I will ever build an army list without a medium mortar. So I had to have one. And of course, Warlord Games has a Japanese medium mortar, but I decided to go with one from the Assault group just to shake things up a bit. But I was also making an order for them anyways, decided to pick it up. And yeah, not a whole lot to say about this unit. I feel like these models individually are pretty good. Like I said earlier, they've got some overly intense facial hair in my opinion. But yeah, the models are real nice, and they paint it up real good, and I think they look great. So yeah, I always bring a medium mortar. It's just such a good worthwhile unit. If it hits, it does so much damage to an infantry unit, not just in kills but also in pins. I am missing a spotter. It's probably the one thing I really need to add to this army list at this point. But when I do get one, I do plan on taking it with a spotter. There's just really not any reason not to. For 10 points, just makes your mortar that much more survivable and versatile. Alright, so there you have it. That's my Japanese Armored and Infantry platoon. Yeah, I'm super excited to get these guys on the table. I've only really been able to get them done in such a short time because of COVID-19, but because of COVID-19, I've also not been able to use them in a game yet. I haven't played a game since end of January. So I'm a little stir crazy in that sense. But yeah, I can't wait to get them on the table. I love the fact that Japanese forces are actually really flexible with time frames and even play styles, but this could very easily represent a Battle of Kalkangol army, which was I think 1937 or 38. So very, very early war, minus the Shinhoda Chiha. But if I wanted to fight that conflict, this army definitely works, but it also works as a 1945 army. They used their tanks all the way through the war, even though they had slightly better ones that they developed closer towards the end of the war. I just use this for all time frames. So that was another big selling point for me in choosing Japanese. But yeah, so excited to get them on the table. I don't actually know how effective they'll be as Japanese. Again, I don't have bamboo stick fighters. I don't have 3,000 infantry models. Really plan on using them as a conventional army. I will have the bonsai rule in my back pocket for sure. But I really, yeah, plan on using these as a conventional army. So we'll put that to the test and we'll see how they do. So thanks for tuning in. If you made it all the way through this, I applaud you, and I also apologize. I feel like I'm a horrible orator when it comes to talking about this stuff or anything on camera. I think I'm much better behind it. But yeah, if this was interesting to you at all, let me know in the comments. I could do the same thing with my Romanian army, which I feel is pretty unique. So if that is something that interests you, let me know, and I can definitely put that together. But for now, stay safe and paint on.